Oh, hola, comprende. Arrivederci. I don't fucking know. That means goodbye. But anyway, um, so yeah, this is obviously a Grums dunk. But in reality, it's like also a dunk on uh Ed Shucks or Sire Williams and whoever made this original post as well. Let's just be honest. Even if this wasn't in a horror in the original game, I mean, I guess it's changed. Like, I guess she got shoes now. Maybe that's what the wokeness is. Like, they removed her, they made her have high heels instead of feet. You know, they made it less sexual, or equally as sexual, but less sexual for purely foot fetishists and no one else, right? Because I mean, high heels are usually more sexual for people who aren't into feet. You know, I mean, I'm into feet, so it is less sexual to me. But I like people are people who are not into feet would probably be like the pose is more provocative and stuff. So anyway, the idea, oh, it's pregnant. It's a horror game, right? Like it's sort of like Dead Space remake, right? Like the corporate propaganda posters from the original game added diversity hires, making them feel even more fake and soulless. Like, yes, the fake and soulless diversity hires in Dead Space remake are there to make it feel fake and soulless. It's a corporate propaganda poster. Like the point is that, hey, this is why you should work at our company, right? Making them faker adds to the atmosphere, in my opinion, right? And we know it's fake because I mean, it's always fake, right? But when it's in a horror game, suddenly because of like the atmosphere it feels even faker, right? And I feel like that's the good part about horror is it really hard to make it woke, right? Because you like a good way to say it, like gay shit has been in horror films since like the fucking 50s, right? Even before then really, but like in films itself, right? And yet the genre has never really been woke. It's had gay shit, it's had trans stuff, but it's never been woke. It's still never been woke, right? Because wokeifying horror makes it not horror anymore, right? In order for a rape revenge story, right? Like where the heroine, kills all the bad guys who raped her, right, in brutal ways, you know if there was no she got raped at the beginning, right? You know, uh there then the it would just be an action film, right? In order for it to be a horror film, there has to be a reason she's the hero that's physically alluded to. You have to see her suffer so you can root for her, kind of thing, right? And so that's kind of the thing. You have to have everyone kind of suffer in a horror film, right? The main character always suffers the most. Like if it's not a revenge, rape revenge story, like Last House on the Left or whatever, it might be it might be a film like Terrifier, right? Terrifier. Let's do Terrifier 3, right? And the character in that story has already lost her friends, is traumatized, right? Um, and then uh and then like towards the end she's like brutally like tormented even further with all her family killed, right? And except for like one little baby cousin, that's it. And she's barely holding on to her sanity enough to fight what's effectively the literal fucking devil in the film, right? And she does, and just barely, even after that she's still tortured even further, because they still have the Christmas spirit. Apparently Satan still likes Christmas, so they let her open a present which contains the one weapon that can actually kill the little pale girl, which I guess isn't the devil, but like it's basically the devil. I don't know. Like anyway, and then the sword heals her. It's not like it doesn't heal her mental scars. It doesn't heal any of that. Her brother's still dead. It doesn't heal that. It doesn't heal the fact that her uncle, mother, father, and her aunt are all dead. It doesn't heal the fact that right after she kills her and nearly kills Art the Clown, a hole to hell opens up and swallows up her baby cousin she was trying to save and the sword. And then Art escapes, so like, Art's not dead, and that sword's gone missing. Well, you got to find that sword somehow. You got to go to hell anyway. So it's not like, a good way to say it, if they made her gay, would that really be pro-gay? No, it fucking wouldn't, right? Like, there's no character in that movie where you could call it pro-gay because the character was gay. If Art's gay, okay, he's a fucking sadistic fucking monstrosity from hell. All right, well, that's not pro-gay. Like, fucking cannibal, pedophile, mass murdering piece of shit. Yeah, that's who you want to be. Your pro-gay message, right? Yeah. Let's say Sienna. No, she's tortured all the time. The little girl. Let's just say the little girl. I mean, first off, there's the fact that it's like a fucking 8-year-old. Like she even says he's just a baby. I mean, she's 8, not a toddler, but like still, she's not exactly old. She's still like in fucking like second grade, right? So making her gay, you have that, and also you'd have the fucking fact that um, she gets sent to hell at the end of the movie, so she's definitely getting tortured. She might still be alive, but she's definitely not enjoying whatever goes down in there. She's got that sword, so maybe she can fight him off, but whatever. If she even ends up eventually making it out, she's not gonna like how it goes, right? And then maybe her brother, well, the skull with glasses. That's his end. Her uncle. Oh yeah, the headless corpse that has his intestines split. Well, what about this character survives? What about that background mall cop? Well, I mean, I guess, but it's a background character. They suffered from the mediocrity of the position, right? Like you can't make it woke because no matter what you do, it's gonna send a message of the opposite because of just how the film is, right? And that's just the cool part about horror. Like even that this is technically woke, right? But it's already in the original game, really. But that's not really the point. The point is it's a horror game. This is a sleazy strip club. So now they're even sleazier and stripperier, right? It goes by the idea that these are like fetish joints for shitty people. Okay, right? You don't even have to like think that hard. It's a fucking horror game. You're not enjoying any of this kind of stuff, right? It's sort of like the rape victim, right? Making her hot as fuck would also have implications, I guess, to the anti-woke crowd. But it would also kind of be like, well, they sexed her up, right? They made her a sex doll, right? Because she's a rape victim, and then uglying her up really doesn't send that message. Oh, they did it because they just want to make all women ugly. Because first off, the wife is still decent looking, and then Angela, yeah, she's not hot anymore, but like, does that really matter? No, it doesn't, because she's got a horrible story. No, she's got that trauma. It's not like it's pro ugly. This is her dealing with her trauma in a bad way, which is sort of like what all the characters in the game do. All the characters are traumatized. You play as a guy who, depending on like the ending you get, either murdered his wife and is tormented by that fact to the point he makes this whole world to kill himself, right? Pyramid Head is basically his guilt killing him, right? That's the symbolism in this game. Not in every game. And in fact, I think Pyramid Head really should have been only in Silent Hill 2 because it really only makes sense in the context of Silent Hill 2, right? The other Silent Hills, which have a different, type of story, have a different type of story, right? Like Silent Hill 1, 3, and 4 do not have, the same, like, it's a personal hell, right? Silent Hill 2 is the only personal hell game in the original four games. Um, in Silent Hill 1 and 3, and which are, like I'd say like the more canon ones as like following a story. In Silent Hill 1, obviously, the father's looking for his daughter, and he just ends up finding out that like she's like a deity and shit, and yeah, it's a crazy. Samael is mentioned a lot in the game, although it's actually Azazel is the betrayer, but that's beside the point. Samael is like is actually this is the weird part. Like Azazel is the leader of the Nephilim or Satan, but they use Samael, which is I usually isn't Samael like outside of the because there is the Lesser Kings of Solomon, which is where like most horror obviously gets like its biblical like roots anyway. It doesn't come from the Bible. It comes from the Lesser Kings of Solomon or the Divine Comedy. Um and so, I haven't read those books yet, so maybe I should. Especially knowing how much modern horror is basically just added. It's sort of like how a lot of superhero anime and all that is inspired by Journey to the West. Like Journey to the West is basically the template for 90% of anime. And then you have the same thing with Lesser Kings of Solomon and Divine Comedy, two like books being like an inspiration for like a lot of like horror culture, right? Like a lot of it. So you gotta, I gotta really read those books to figure out. Hey, look, let's see how the origins really went. you know, um, but I'm pretty sure, like, because in the Bible, Samael is like not really like much of a character, right? It's just like I think it's just like mentioned once, and then Azazel is mentioned, basically as a leader of the Nephilim after a while. He's mentioned before that, and after you can kind of tell that's supposed to be Lucifer, the light bringer, or Satan, the opposer, or the devil the accusation slash prosecutor. You know, that's basically what those words mean. By the way, devil means to prosecute or punish, right? Satan means to oppose or obstruct, right? And then Lucifer means to bring light to, right? That's probably like the least evil sounding name. There is an evil connotation to that, though, just so you know. It doesn't actually mean a good thing. The light bringer in that really means like to bring to light your sins. If I recall correctly, you're not. He's not. He's it's not a good thing that he's the light bringer, right? And then Azazel is actually the angel name, right? That's the name, because they all have El right at the end of it, because El is the species of Elim, which is the species that God leads, otherwise known as the angels, right? Like the Elim are the angels. So you have the seraphim, the cherubim, the malachim, right? Those are like the main angel archetypes, right? So you got the messengers for the malachim. You got the cherubs are like the chariots. You got the ophanim, which are like the wheels, and then you got the seraphim, which are like the ones that are really freaky looking, and like knowing what cherubim actually look like is definitely saying something. And yeah, all of those have different positions in heaven, obviously, but like that's kind of the thing, right? Like you can't really wokeify horror because wokifying horror like makes it less scary. Like a good way to say it, a lot of like let's look at like one of the gayest films ever made, right? Which is a horror movie. Um, it's by John Waters, and it's called Pink Flamingos. The gay people in that aren't good people, right? To say the least. Like the person who played Divine is actually pretty dope. That's I'm not dissing like gay people for this, but like they aren't made in a good light. The character plays the most disgusting person imaginable. Like that's basically like the name, like their goal is to be the biggest piece of dog shit in the world. I mean, do they succeed? I mean, not really, but like in terms of the movie, yes. And sadly, if you watch the movie, she's not like he's not exactly a good character, but it's not like it's like it's not like there's not far worse people. It's a good way to say it, and it's sad, but it's also kind of like this horrific reality. As much as he's trying to be the most evil, disgusting, vile person imaginable, there's people who have done far worse way before him and after him. And were doing way worse when that movie was being filmed. That's like, I think, the real horror of that film, to be fair, is that despite trying to act as disgusting and evil as possible, it's still not the worst person in the world. And they're trying to be. So I feel like even like when you put it in reality, it fucking is horrific because of just knowing the level of depravity is nowhere near what humanity is actually capable of. And that's like, another thing. Like a lot of horror movies don't really have that. Obviously, Terrifier would not really sit well with that argument, but Terrifier is fine on its own. But then you get like like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? It didn't actually happen, but hey, it could happen. It could happen. There could be a very isolated town, in like a big southern state where it's mostly rural areas where the only people who live for hundreds of miles are one fucking family. And they could have just they murder you and no one would know because they're the only people in that town. And there are towns like that in the US. So it has it happened? No. Could it happen? Yes. And it could happen even now because there are places that are kind of off the grid like that. Now, does it happen? Most likely not. But that thought that it could is already horrific enough that you don't need to worry about does it, it could. The fact it could happen is scary, right? And so this is why it's just hard to wokeify horror because okay, what if you make the villain, a woman or something? Like they did this with Resident Evil. Like they made the villains a woman. Okay, the villain's a woman trying to get her like a new kid. Okay, but she's evil. So you ruined it there. Okay, what if Ethan was gay? Well, have you seen what he goes through? It's not exactly like, like okay, it's okay to be like maybe it's okay to be gay, but like apparently it's also okay to torture and like nearly kill the guy. Like of like several times, and but because he's got a little mushroom power, he's like, okay, he can't die, but it's not like he isn't feeling the fuck out of that. Yeah, he's fucking tortured the whole game, and psychologically in the second section too. Like it's not like anyone in the game is really like okay at the end, and that's why, right? Like that it's hard to wokeify because even if you do like do things that might be considered woke, it's not really woke. And I think the best example of this is Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise is a film where the message of the film and the message of the family characters and all that can be interpreted as woke, but if you really like horror, you can easily interpret it as the most anti-woke movie that year. What's the movie about? Well, there's a trans-friendly family. They've got like a good thing with their kids going around. Like they're struggling, but they're trying. They're not really bad kids. Not really like they're not bad people, right? That's like I guess like where you could call it woke. But then they all suffer and die horrific deaths and then get formed into like each other as like, their love is like an unholy abomination at the end. There's a character who was like a groupie who was kind of basically a whore, right? And she got pregnant, and like, throughout most of the movie, she wants to abort the kid until like the very last like few scenes of the movie where she decides, no, I'm having this kid, and I'm saving, the one thing I have left from my sister's family too. And so ends up, she's gonna have two kids. She's gonna have to raise her sister's daughter, and she's gonna have to raise her own, and it'll be a struggle for her, but she went through enough. So she's saying, I'm going to be a mother. I am not getting rid of this child. And that's the only reason they're allowed to live. So it's an anti-abortion film now, okay? Like, yes, it could be considered woke because there's a trans character in the movie, but it's really not, like, at all. It's not woke. It could never really be woke because in order to be woke with horror, you have to have them suffer. If they don't suffer in some form of or another, then it's not horror. No, you can't have horror where no one suffers, right? And the ways to suffer are there being mediocrity, like just a background character, you know, literally dying a horrific death, being the main hero, which means that they have to like suffer through and live through all the horror. And that, the live is optional in some horror, obviously. Sometimes they kill the final girl, sometimes they don't. Or the villain. You have to suffer being seen as the most evil character in the movie. So regardless of like, how well intentioned you are with wokeness and horror, if you don't actually, do like have all of them suffer, they're not really, you're not really making a horror film. And at the end of the day, if you're not making a horror film, it's, it doesn't matter if it's woke or not, it's not woke horror. So horror objectively can't be woke. Now it can have woke elements, like I said, Evil Dead Rise, Dead Space, and all that are woke. This game is woke too, right? But it doesn't really matter because it doesn't ruin it, because it's hard. You can't ruin it and still be a horror product. It doesn't work that way like other genres. You can still ruin it, but like either it's not horror and that's why you ruined it. That's one way, right? That's actually the easiest way, really, but that's beside the point. Or you can ruin it by, um, like doing certain things. Like, because it wouldn't be wokeness, but it would still be like, just like maybe the gore looks like shit, right? Or like the characters are just so dumb it becomes comical or whatever, and it's unintentional comedy, right? Oh, there you go. But like then it's like, okay, either it's horror because it's not horror because it's not trying to be horror, or it's not horror because it's just so fucking bad no one can take it seriously. So you can't really wokeify horror because of that. If you add this gay shit to try to ruin it, it doesn't really. It either doesn't really ruin it because they still follow the beats required for it to be horror, or it does and it's just a horror game. I mean, or it doesn't. I mean, and like it's not a horror game. So like, yeah. Anyway, yeah. This is hilarious every time they do it, and it's always horror games where they like fail. You would think that they would just stop trying to do horror games, like where like they try to say this is woke, because like you always fail, my guy. You always do, because this is the one genre where even if you put a bunch of woke shit in it, it's not woke anymore. Cause it's horror. They're all gonna die horrible deaths or be tortured or something. So is it really promoting it? No. And that's the best part about horror. Nothing in it is promoted. If you want to, if anything, not having any gay or weird shit in horror is more promoting it than not, right? Because it's horror. It's horror. Anyway, that's beside the point. See ya.